Every time Brian deserved to go to jail. Almost every Family Guy character has found themselves on the wrong side of the law at some point. But what if Brian Griffin actually faced the consequences of all of his actions? The lovable yet troublesome dog may seem charming on the surface, but beneath that exterior lies a trail of questionable deeds.
You know what, Brian? I will. Oh my God!
And downright criminal behavior. Over the years, Brian has racked up quite the record of offenses, and today we're diving into every instance where he truly deserved to end up behind bars. Get ready for some jaw-dropping moments that'll make you question how he's still free. Number 1. Wolf of Wall Street. In Season 16, Episode 15, titled The Wolf of Wall Street, Brian stumbles upon Stewie, who has transformed his entire room into a mini carnival. He collected every coin-operated horse in Quahog to avoid waiting in line. Brian couldn't help but wonder how a 1-year-old managed to pay for all of them.
How do you possibly have the money for this type of stuff? Investing! I invest in the stock market.
In true Brian fashion, he jumps into a debate with Stewie, dismissing his stock market-funded operation and declaring that the system is rigged.
I don't know, Stewie. If you ask me, the stock market's just a rigged game.
The topic of the stock market and investment doesn't come up again until later that day when Brian goes to pick up Stewie from preschool. As he attempts to reverse his car, he accidentally hits Consuela's car.
What the hell?
But does Brian stick around? Of course not. He's uninsured, broke, and also allergic to accountability. Brian fled the scene in a single second.
Just tell your insurance what happened, and then they'll, oh, you're driving away because you don't have insurance.
On their way home, Stewie makes an enticing offer to Brian, and he agrees in no time. Stewie offers to turn the $100 into a significant return to cover the damages if Brian lets him make an investment in the stock market. Spoiler alert, bad decisions are kind of his thing.
I knew it. You lost it all, didn't you? God, I never should have given you my money.
Later, Stewie hands Brian not only the $1,000 to fix his car, but also an extra $1,000 in profit. Brian was absolutely floored by the magic of the investment in the stock market.
My God, you gotta teach me how to invest.
Stewie and Brian then make a pact, according to which Stewie would teach Brian how to invest in the stock market, and Brian in return would teach Stewie the art of gymkata, the mix of gymnastics and karate. And yep, this is the show's peak of absurdity.
Okay, but I can see this is going to be a lot of work. So in return, you must teach me gymkata.
Initially, Brian disagreed.
I swore I'd never teach gymkata again.
However, he went back on his word when he started thinking about the potential earnings and ended up agreeing. Well, this is not the only time he went back on his word. As his investments skyrocket, Brian decides to be noble. He promises to donate every dollar he earns to cancer research. Heartwarming, right? Except, well, nope. Instead of funding research, Brian rents out a Ferrari and cruises around town.
Yay! Sweet, I know those guys.
That is not the end of the story. Brian forgets about all of his morals as if they just never existed when he meets a potential new investor at a sketchy Korean business that sells protein shakes with Stewie.
That's a great company I found to invest in. Korean. They make protein shakes.
As soon as they enter, Stewie quickly figures out why the investment is so low. Turns out the company is using dog meat. Yes, dog meat. Even Stewie, the baby who's been hell-bent on world domination, has a moral line, and this actually crosses it.
I know why it's so cheap. Oh my God, look at all those poor, sad dogs!
But Brian, oh no, he's cool with animal cruelty if the price is right. Unfortunately for him, karma's got a quick response time.
I can't believe you still want to invest in this. They use dog meat.
As he approaches the front desk, he's given a towel soaked in chloroform, knocking him unconscious almost immediately. When he wakes up, surprise! He's in a cage, surrounded by the same dogs that he just sold out for a quick buck. Could this get any worse for Brian? Well, absolutely.
Phone. Stewie, it's Brian. You gotta help me. I'm gonna get eaten. Damn it.
When Stewie realizes that Brian is missing, he sprints to the factory on a rescue mission to save Brian. He finds the security guards dragging Brian, but he takes out the guards using Gymkata. Once again, Stewie saves Brian, and this time, Brian tries to blame money for his wrongdoings. Thankfully, Stewie steps in to set him straight.
Just lost my head.
Well, lesson learned, Brian.
But I guess I learned my lesson about the evils of Wall Street. Me?
I've been investing in the market forever and doing just fine. You did it for 1 week, and this isn't about Wall Street. I cannot stress that enough.
Now, if you think this is the worst thing that Brian's ever done, you're far from right. Number 2, be careful what you fish for. In this episode, Be Careful What You Fish For, Brian could really end up serving time in prison for the wrong reasons. The story takes off when Brian picks up Stewie from the daycare, and he's covered in paint. And this doesn't sit well with Brian, so he investigated Stewie about the matter. Stewie brushed it off, mentioning that it wasn't too bad since another kid had been left in the drawer all day. You know, just normal daycare things.
37 other kids in there. One was in a drawer all day. Yeah, and is it normal that Miss Emily tied us all to the sink while she went out to return a birthday present?
The next morning, Brian joins Stewie to see if he's being truthful. It turns out Stewie was downplaying just how bad things really are. Brian storms off to confront Stewie's teacher.
Yeah, hi. Who are you?
Brian.
Oh, God, that's terrible.
But things don't go as planned when he sees Stewie's daycare teacher and is blinded by her hotness. Forget the neglected kids and the blatant dysfunction. Brian's just too busy tripping over himself to flirt with her. That's just classic Brian right there.
Oh, yeah. I should probably go back in there.
They're fine. In fact, I see Stewie reading a book.
Brian keeps visiting the daycare, but it's clearly not to check on Stewie's well-being. During one visit to the daycare, Stewie informs Brian that Miss Emily didn't show up and had even left him the keys to the open place. Despite this, Brian still defends her. When, upon arrival, Miss Emily starts chatting with Brian, Stewie quickly picks up on his intentions and calls him out for his disgraceful behavior.
Brian, what are you doing here?
Came by to check on my pal.
I thought you had a busy day at your legal practice.
Oh.
Things take a twist when Miss Emily brings out some wine. Yes, wine in the middle of work hours. Does Brian call her out? Nah. Instead, he just shrugs it off and asks her out for lunch and a movie. Stewie comes home with a dislocated arm and reveals that he got it after standing up to Miss Emily. But instead of supporting Stewie, Brian gaslights him, claiming that the arm injury must have been from sleeping wrong. Yeah, Brian, because awkward sleeping totally dislocates shoulders.
I finally stood up for all of us and told Miss Emily we should be given a proper lunch.
Later in the episode, Brian arrives eagerly prepared for his date, only to be met with an unexpected twist.
Okay, babe, have fun.
Not one to let things slide, Brian calls the cops on Miss Emily, going full moral crusader out of nowhere. And the audacity? He even lectures her on her behavior.
There is a special place in hell for people like you.
Honestly, Brian should have been locked up right alongside her for turning a blind eye and enabling all of her chaos. But let's move on to the next episode where Brian was undeniably in the wrong. Number 3, Herpes, the Love Sore. The next episode we're diving into is Season 14, Episode 12, titled Herpes, the Love Sore. As the title hints, things are about to get a little uncomfortable. In this episode, Brian is lounging in front of the TV when Stewie comes in to join him. Stewie watches as a movie character forms a blood brother pact with an Indian chief for the first time.
Hey, what you watching?
The Outlaw Josie Wales. It's a Western.
Ew, what's Clint Eastwood doing with that Indian chief?
Brian gives him a brief overview of the ritual and explains its significance. Some parts of it intrigues him, so he asks Brian to make the same pact with him in a very questionable manner.
Yes, let's do that. Brian, I want you inside me.
They head to the kitchen, cut their hands, and seal the pact of their friendship, and then Stewie becomes happy knowing that they have such a strong and lasting bond and it will last forever. Spoiler, it's not. However, he deeply regrets his choice when he wakes up the next morning and he has a nasty little herpy on his lip. Not exactly the friendship souvenir that he had in mind.
You son of a bitch! You gave me herpes!
He races down the hall to confront Brian in the kitchen, only to be hit with a shocking revelation.
Stewie, I don't even have herpes.
Oh, yeah? Let me see. Hey,
Oh my God, look at you! You're more herpes than dog!
Turns out, Brian already knew that he had herpes, but still went ahead with this pact. Like, what? That's friendship betrayal on another level.
Huh? Oh, I got a little boppo. Oh, that's cute. Ah, I want boppo. Shut up! Just shut up! You should be ashamed of yourself!
Later that day, at the daycare, Stewie tries to conceal his sore with a fake mustache, but his plan falls apart when the teacher rips it off, pointing out that no child could grow facial hair at such a young age.
That's very cute, Stewie.
At home, while Stewie is having a rather questionable chat with his teddy bear, Chris overhears and decides to chime in. Apparently, Brian's been running this blood-pact scam, and Stewie and Chris are beyond livid and seriously consider calling 911. Honestly, they should have just gone through with it.
Just wanted to let you know you're not alone. Not only that, but I also got it from Brian.
But they take their revenge by backstabbing Brian's date, exposing his secrets by warning his potential partners that he is carrying some STDs. Poor Brian. It's safe to say that his love life takes a serious hit.
Oh, hey, Brian. Must be such a good person to knowingly go out with a herpes-riddled dirtbag.
They even changed Brian's Facebook profile picture just to embarrass him, which makes him give in. Chris takes his car for a drive around the block, and Stewie asks for an interview with Neve Campbell. When that proves impossible, Brian settles for an apology because, let's face it, what else can he do?
I'm sorry, Stewie. You're right.
It's absolutely maddening, right? But hold on, because the next one's even worse. Brian should have earned a one-way ticket to jail after this stunt. Number 4. Play it again, Brian. Next on our list of Brian's greatest fails is Season 6, Episode 10. Play it again, Brian. An episode that somehow manages to make us hate him even more. Brian writes an essay and gets invited to Martha's Vineyard to receive an award for the essay.
I'm gonna be honored at the big ceremony on Martha's Vineyard.
Meanwhile, in the episode, Lois and Peter face some relationship struggles. Lois plans a romantic date for them, but Peter keeps ditching her to hang out with his friends. So Brian suggests that they should join him on his vacation to get away from the tension. Yeah, because nothing screams romance like third-wheeling with Brian.
Why don't you come out to Martha's Vineyard and watch me accept my award?
I'll start packing.
They start off with Lois and Brian enjoying some peaceful vacationing, but Peter quickly becomes bored and isn't entertained by the whole vacationing thing. When it comes to the actual purpose of this vacation, receiving the award, Brian gives a speech full of compliments that seems to be directed at Lois. It might have been sweet if it weren't for the tiny little detail that he's been spending the entire episode trying to seduce Lois. Of course, Peter crashes the ceremony drunk because, why wouldn't he? She calls him out for missing another important family event, and Peter apologizes the next morning.
Lois, I'm sorry about last night.
Later, Lois invites Brian to join her for some wholesome activities like bike rides and a carnival. It's all very innocent on her part, but Brian's dirty little mind sees this as the golden opportunity to make his move. Ugh, the audacity of this dog.
Lois, my darling! Whoa, 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 whoa. What am I doing?
That evening, he offers to rent movies and spend the night with her. He admits that he wrote an essay about Lois, but despite her showing no romantic interest, he continues to push for more. And after she repeatedly says no, he still forces himself on her while she's drunk. Lois fights him off, as she should, and kicks him out of the room.
Get down! This is a good sweater!
The next morning, Peter confronts Brian, but Brian blames Peter for mistreating Lois. Really, Brian? That's the angle you're going with? This leads to a bar fight that's more awkward than epic, but they eventually agree to never let this happen again.
Brian, she's my wife. I promise, Peter. Nothing like this will ever happen again.
Brian later apologizes to Lois, and she forgives him. But let's be real, Brian deserved way more than just a slap on the wrist.
Suffocated, but with you, I imagine it would be like doing it with a stuffed animal.
Oh, Brian. Well, he definitely needs some serious discipline. Now, let's talk about the time that he crossed the line by targeting a high schooler, and it's one of his worst moments. Number 5, Scammed Yankees. In the 11th episode of Season 14, Scammed Yankees, Brian gets annoyed by Meg and her friends for all the noise that they're making.
Right, muffin top, blue.
Naturally, Brian whines to Stewie about the noise. Stewie, in true Stewie fashion, shuts him down faster than Brian can say, "I'm unemployed." Honestly, Stewie's savage takedowns are the only justice in the show.
Well, not everybody can be as fascinating as you, Brian. Thanks for coming by.
When Meg asks Brian to drive her and her friends somewhere, he reluctantly agrees.
Please, Brian.
It would get them out of the house.
Unsurprisingly, one of the girls forgets her gym bag in the car, so Brian heads into the girls' locker room at Meg's school to return it. And well, you can guess what happened next. At first, Brian is mesmerized by what he believes is one of the hottest bodies that he's ever seen. However, he realizes it belongs to Meg's friend Patty. He should have done the right thing and just walked away, especially since it's a high school student. Ooh, yeah. But nope, his morals immediately take a back seat, and his newfound interest in Patty shows just how low he's willing to go when it comes to women. That's Brian for all of you. It's creepy, unsettling, and totally wrong. And it shouldn't take a baby to make him realize that. The even bigger problem is what Brian does next.
Tiny waist, firm butt, great rack.
She's in high school.
I know!
He feigns interest in Meg's life just to gather information about Patty and figure out how to make his move. Armed with his newfound knowledge, he trails Meg and her friends to the mall, where he begins his performance.
Oh my God! I didn't expect to see you guys here.
When he coincidentally bumps into them, he whips out the saddest card of them all, the Build-A-Bears he allegedly made for kids with cancer. I can't believe that Brian went to that extent. He gives one to Patty, playing on her emotions, then invites her to grab a meal at Panda Express.
You know, Patty, I've got $7.50 left on my Panda Express card.
Sure.
Later, he picks up Patty from school. Yes, school, for their date. They listen to Smash Mouth, which is already a red flag over there, and go stargazing, where Brian lays on some of the cheesiest lines imaginable. And yes, you guessed it right, the last thing that Brian had on his mind was to get Patty naked. But before things get way too out of hand, Meg shows up to put a stop to things.
Miss Patty, Brian's just taking advantage of you.
Meg tells her friend that she thinks Brian's kindness is only because of her looks. At first, Patty doesn't get it, especially since Meg is always calling her dumpy. But after Meg gives this explanation, she gets the point, and the two of them just walk off, leaving Brian frustrated and $18 poorer after a date that went nowhere.
Oh, come on, what the hell?
And that, my friends, is another one for Brian's Hall of Shame. Number 6. Christmas Crime. Next up, we're unwrapping Season 14, Episode 9, Christmas Crime, where Brian, in classic Brian fashion, manages to turn the most wonderful time of the year into a legal disaster. Stewie is thrilled about the holiday season, especially after spotting the latest doll on his wish list. Meanwhile,
Toy of the season, Happy Asking Panda. What is your favorite color? What is your parents' political affiliation?
Brian ruins the moment by ranting about commercialism and holiday consumerism.
But do you really not see that you're crassly manifesting the... Chris, can you please put the dog out?
Yes, sir.
The family heads out to the Quahog tree lighting ceremony, dragging a reluctant Brian along. At the event, Brian continues his complaining, downing drink after drink at the bar and ranting about the holiday.
Just what we need. A religious display on government property.
Unable to specify, he storms off and drunkenly crashes his car into the town's nativity scene. Fearing the incident could be considered a hate crime, Brian tries to hide the wreckage in the Spirit Airlines parking lot.
I've just got to hide the evidence.
Stewie quickly figures out what happened.
Brian, I can tell when you're lying.
And he even gets Brian to spill the beans. Honestly, Stewie could have been a detective for the FBI, or at least the host of his own true crime podcast.
Leave town and start a new life together.
The mayor, questioning Brian about the crime, accepts his lies about being at the food bank.
Brian, where were you last night?
Let's see, food bank till 8.
Together, they look for the real culprit. But when Christmas gets canceled, until the case is cracked, Stewie wastes no time secretly tipping off the mayor, and let's be real, he wasn't saving Christmas for the town. The kid just needed his doll. Priorities, right?
Spirit Airlines parking lit.
The evidence leads to Brian's arrest, and the family visits him on Christmas Eve, only to leave as soon as he starts spouting his usual complaints.
You know what? It's great. At least it keeps me away from all the phony, crass commercialism.
At first, Brian's living the best life in jail, completely at peace with his holiday crime, but then the holiday spirit hits him like a ton of fruitcake, and suddenly, he's all about fixing his mistakes. However, he leaves with no real lesson learned. Free to go after the mayor's forgiveness, what else can you expect from Brian, right? Now, if you thought that was bad, just wait, because next on the list, Brian manages to outdo himself in the worst possible way. Number 7, The Finer Strings. In The Finer Strings, 13th episode of Season 15, Brian takes on the role of caregiver when Lois convinces him to help her father Carter. Lois becomes concerned about her dad's cataracts after he confuses Bryce Dallas Howard with Jessica Chastain at the high school play. When he also mistakes Carrot Top for Jessica Chastain, Lois decides it's time for action and insists that he undergoes the surgery.
You're blind as a bat.
The surgery is successful, but it leaves him temporarily blind, which allows Lois to lie about how many family members showed up to check on him. Seems like Carter isn't exactly the family favorite. Dr. Hartman recommends that Carter have someone assist him during his recovery.
Your vision will be impaired for a few weeks while you recover. I recommend you have someone around to help you during this time.
Lois claims she's too busy to help, but suggests Brian be a service dog instead. Eager to impress Lois, Brian agrees to move in with Carter and assist him during his recovery. Oh no, not this dog again.
Come on, Lois, I don't want to do that.
Brian, please.
However, Carter's eccentric and demanding requests quickly make Brian's life difficult, including putting on a wig to help him out of the tub. That's quite awkward, to be honest.
Put on this lady wig and help me out of the tub.
He believes that he and Carter have become friends, but the truth is that Brian only cares about Carter's wealth. Brian invites himself over to Carter's house, but he's immediately kicked out.
Carter wants nothing to do with me. I'm just so mad.
Brian cornering Carter and spraying tap water from Flint, Michigan into his eyes. The result is disastrous, as the water causes more damage than Brian anticipated.
My eyes!
Realizing the harm he's done, Brian tries to apologize, but things are quickly wrapped up when Stewie pulls a lever to speed up the resolution. Carter, now healed, reflects on the lessons that he learned, and the trio shares an awkward hug. Pretty wild, right? Stick around for the final episode on this list where Brian could have easily ended up behind bars for his truly questionable actions. Number 8, PD4. The 11th episode of Season 14, PD4, follows up on Brian's controversies in the previous episode. He was voted to be moved out of the house following a controversial tweet that made him the pariah of the town.
Off-color tweet suddenly made Brian a pariah to all of Quahog.
Brian is struggling to pay his rent with no money, and his writing career still stalled after 16 seasons. He tries reaching out to the family, but they leave him hanging. Ouch. Now that one has gotta sting.
Well, again, it's Brian. Guys, really, call me back.
Left with no choice, he reluctantly gets a job at a suicide hotline. There he meets his coworker Martha. Naturally, Brian starts flirting with her because why not flirt with your coworker when you're already at rock bottom? His first call comes in and it's Stewie pretending to be a suicidal dog.
Hey, I'm a pathetic dog whose family kicked him out and I want to kill myself.
Before the episode is even halfway through, Brian is already trying to invite Martha to some Netflix and chill. Naturally, she walks away, brushing off his offer. No surprise there, right?
Yeah, so I was thinking maybe we could Netflix and grill.
Good night, Brian.
But Brian doesn't give up that easily. No. He thinks, well, if she won't date me in real life, I'll just stalk her on Facebook, because that'll work in Brian's head. Meanwhile, Martha steps outside, rethinking her decision after her therapist encouraged her to take more chances. She heads back in, only to be met with a disgusting scene, and walks off immediately. Guess she's not that desperate for love at all.
Gross! You scumbag!
Dr. Fish.
Brian confesses to his landlord about the mess he's created and his fear of losing his job due to his financial struggles. The landlord casually suggests that Brian do what he typically does, plant drugs on someone and call the cops.
Plant drugs and call the cops.
The next morning, Martha surprisingly decides to forgive him. Yet again, a woman wronged by Brian is ready to let it slide, but it's too late.
I just wanted to let you know I'm not going to tell anyone about what happened.
Brian has already set up the drugs. He attempts to warn her to deny everything if the cops come, but by the time he speaks, they're already there, holding up the bag of cocaine that he hid in her desk. Oh, poor Martha.
What is that?
Like you don't know. Cocaine.
She protests her innocence, but they don't buy it. As the police hauled Martha away, she managed to shove Brian down the stairs. Honestly, Brian, you definitely had that coming.
You bastard!
So there you have it. Every time that Brian really should have been behind bars. From his lies to his manipulation to straight up law breaking. This dog has gotten away with way more than he should have. But what do you think? Did we cover all the times that he deserved to get some jail time? Or did we miss some of those shady moments that you always see in the series? Drop your thoughts down in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and we'll keep serving up the laughs and all the drama from Quahog. And guys, don't forget that we will catch you in the next video.